Hi, this is part two of the formative number 3, and it's going to be a short one because I realized that the one due last Wednesday was long. Um, and you just saw a short video, part 1, of a woman named Nechama Leibowitz. Now, it just so happens that in the modern world, when people say they studied with someone and that idea gets a lot of brownie points or a lot of elevation of status, there's really two names that are brought up. One, of course, is this man, Rav Yosef Soloveitchik, or the Rav, which we actually learned about last semester. This is him right here, the Rav, and to say that you were in his classroom or you are a student of his is like, wow, that's amazing. And I'd say the other person that holds this same kind of awe is Nechama Leibowitz. You heard I think that was kind of an AI computer generated talker because they got some of this, like Nechama, right? It's Nechama. And if you see, they lived pretty much during the same, they were contemporaries. Nechama living in Israel, Rav Soloveitchik living in America. Both very traditional Jews, but both very, very passionate about their Judaism. And so we heard a little bit about Nechama today, and I want to show you some of her stuff in action. So here is a book, by the way, in my library, and in actually the Tarbut library as well. So these are books that I think I got when I went to rabbinical school for the first time. But these are commentaries that are so useful. I even thought once of actually having a course just studying the Torah of Nechama Leibowitz and how she goes about studying, because I think you'll see, at least you saw in the first video, she does a lot of similar moves that we are trying to do in this class. So much of the things that I bring to you are really developed by her, and then when it was passed on to me, no one even mentioned, oh, this is all from Nechama Leibowitz. But she might be actually one of the beginners of this kind of, or highlighters in the modern world of this kind of approach to studying the Torah. And so this is basically every single parsha has a bunch of comments that she makes. And so if you open the book, the one I want to actually look at today is Parshat Lech Lecha, and she has her first the first subject she talks about is leave your country. Next subject, choice of Abraham. Why was Abraham chosen? Next subject is Abraham and Lot. And I want to bring up kind of how, since we just Amelia and then Kelvin have been kind of asking some big questions about Lot, I want to, at least as a way of introducing her and the way she studies Torah, introduce kind of one of her quick thoughts. So here we go, everyone. So first of all, Nechama asks the question, right? Why is Lot with Avram? And so if we look here, right, so we see Avram, right, after the Lech Lecha move, Avram took Sarai and took Lot, his brother-in-law. So the only information we have up to this point about Lot in general is right here about Terach. And so the question is, why, if all we had was this information, which is really all we have, what is the conclusion we can make as to why Avram probably takes Lot along with him, right? If this is all we have, right? And Nechama raises the point, even though she doesn't have any textual clues to this, she says the only thing we can look at is this is something that Terach did already. And if we realize that Terach wants to get to Canaan, he can't get there, he stops in Haran along the way. Avram, even though God says go, the immediate direction that Avram goes in is he goes in the direction that his father was intending on going. Right? By the way, that's a beautiful kind of idea in general. Like, that when there are choices, right? Because God doesn't say go in this direction, go in that, go to the land that I will show you. Start walking, and the orientation that Avram has is an orientation of trying to fulfill the dreams of his father. What a beautiful idea. But we can also say that one of the moves that his father makes is also a move of taking Lot along. So once again, we see actually Avram as a fulfiller of father's desires in some way, right? Which makes it even harder than when we think about Avram as one who leaves Terach when he is actually still alive. So it's almost like these connections are so tight, and that would be like a hard kind of leaving when a hard kind of leaving. Of course, it also asks the question, if Terach is still alive, why doesn't Lot stay with Terach? There's some sense of, no, my leaving needs to have Lot with me. I'm not quite sure what the answer is to that question, but it's certainly a provocative question. I wonder if you have one. Okay, so then actually what Nechama Leibowitz is going to do is, now she looks at this phrase, so this the Lech Lecha phrase, which is right up here, right? I'm going to now go ahead and put in on the left side, and this is going down to Egypt, and this is when the post-Egypt time, right? And the Chama is going to look at these two and try to kind of look at these two psukim and say there's something strange going on. Can you figure it out? Okay. So here's what she does. She looks at actually two specific things. She looks at where property is in both of these psukim, and says actually they're a little bit in a different place. Can you see that? Can you explain what's going on here? Where the place of kind of the stuff is and what that actually might mean. So that's a double question there. And then she goes ahead and she looks at the placement of Lot when he leaves with Avram in the beginning, and then after he's returning after Egypt. And she's going to say there's something interesting about Lot's placement here and Lot's change of placement, where we would expect Lot to be in this part, but he is not, and that's supposed to teach us something. Can you tell me something about what you think that might be and what the problem is? Okay, and here's what Nechama says. Nechama says this beautiful piece of kind of methodology, right? She's going to tell us this is how you read Torah slowly, right? She says the order of words in the second pasuk is not accidental. Changes in emphasis, approval, and disapproval are shades of meaning, and shades of meaning. I'm sorry. Let me change that. Sorry. And shades of meaning are not imparted in the Torah through long-winded psychological explanation or verbose analysis, but they are imparted by a subtle grammatical device or a seemingly insignificant but definitely unusual turn of phrase, words, combination, order, or choice of words. And this is something we've actually learned this year, right? That we're supposed to be attentive or attuned to these subtle changes or subtle, word order changes or changes that kind of make us ask questions and ask what's going on here. There's more than meets the eye. And she's kind of mentioning that the Torah doesn't go into long ideas about thoughts and feelings and emotions. The Torah changes slightly sentences when we compare them. We're supposed to, from there, really understand that there's something beneath the surface that's not being said, but really is in part of the Torah as well. So what is she getting from this when she looks at these at Lot and Lot? She's asking what's going on here. What does this say about Lot and his relationship with Avram and Sarai from one story, from the story of the beginning, and now this story. And here is what she's going to say. When they departed Haran, Lot was an integral part of the family, and their substance or property was held in common, right? So it was Avram, Sarai, and Lot. and then all the property is there, and it seems to kind of be property of them all. When they come back out of Egypt, however, we now have the existence of two separate families. Lot is no longer mentioned immediately after Sarah. It's mentioned, but as someone who's attached himself to the group in an individual capacity, right? So here we have Abraham went out as he and his wife, right? So boom, all that he had, so now property. And Lot is basically kind of attached in some way, right? Now, what she doesn't get into, and she says that this is, so at this point, then it's no surprise what happens next in the Torah, that they're kind of splitting apart. In a sense, they've already split apart, and the splitting apart that happens in the Torah next is just kind of a larger, kind of the next logical step of what has already begun to happen. But I think the larger question that we have to ask that she doesn't go into is, whose fault is this breaking off, right? Is it Avram's fault for what he does in Egypt? And Lot actually says, whoa, that's not the kind of person I want to be part of right now. I am hesitant. Avram has not presented himself as a person I want to follow. Or is it is it actually Lot's fault in some way, that has Lot is something happening in Lot's head that he doesn't want to, kind of needs to separate in order to kind of find his own way. I mean, because interestingly enough, if it is about morals and ethics, like Lot leaves because of Avram's morals, and then Lot goes ahead and actually is even going to be in more morally predicament kind of situations, morally complicated situations, which we're going to see later on when we re-meet Lot again, then it kind of makes us kind of question what's going on, right? Yeah, again, I'm not sure, but I'd love your kind of final thoughts on this. What is causing Lot to split with Avram? Is it Lot's decision? Is it what Lot sees from Avram about Avram? Is it actually just Lot kind of ability to also have a lot of wealth of his own for the first time that he also got in Egypt? Did he get that because it was good for everyone in Egypt, not just Avram, but also Lot? So kind of give me a sense of what's going on. And then that's it for today.